All right, problem number 2 on the final. Okay, you're asked to find the axis of symmetry and the vertex for the equation, the quadratic equation that's there. So, got the quadratic equation written. There are 2 ways you could do this problem. One way is you can use the formula that x equals negative b over 2a. Okay, so you remember the quadratic formula, the coefficient of the x squared is a, the coefficient of the x is b, and then that number at the end is your c. So we could do this way to find our x. So negative b, my b right now is a negative 4, so that's a negative 4. And then I'm going to have 2 times a, well a is negative 2. So a negative 4 is 4. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. 4 divided by negative 4 is negative 1. Okay, now that gives me my x value for my vertex, and it also gives me my axis of symmetry. Okay, my axis of symmetry is that x value. So now I have my axis of symmetry, x equals negative 1. To get my y value for my vertex, what I would need to do is plug that negative 1 in for x. So I'm going to have y equals negative 2, negative 1 squared, minus 4, and again, instead of x, negative 1, and then plus 3. So once I have that, I can go to my calculator and type that in to figure out what y is. So negative 2 times negative 1 squared minus 4 times negative 1, and then plus 3. And I get 5. So now I know that y equals 5. So now I have the x and I have the y of my vertex. So I know my vertex is at negative 1, 5. Okay, so I can go ahead and plot that point, negative 1, 5, which is going to be right here. Okay, now I know that this parabola is going to open down because it's negative 2x squared. That negative tells me that it's going to open down. I also know, because the last number is 3, I know that that is where it's going to cross the y-axis. Okay, now to graph it, I can go ahead and make a table of values. Okay, so I'm just, we'll just use negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2 like we have been. Okay, so for negative 2, I can go ahead and put that into my equation. So I'd have negative 2 parenthesis negative 2 squared minus 4, negative 2, and then plus 3, and I get that it's 3. So I know at negative 2, my y value is going to be positive 3. Sorry about that, not negative 3. So negative 2, positive 3. So I go negative 2 and then up 1, 2, 3. Okay, now negative 1, I already know that that one is 5. 0, I already know that that is 3. Okay. So if I wanted to right now, I could actually go ahead and have a pretty good parabola. We just won't worry about these because I know it's going to go through here and down through there and there's my parabola. So that's one way that you could do this. Okay, the other way you could do this, I'm going to go ahead and erase this negative b over 2a stuff. Is you could do this by completing the square. Okay, and you've done this, and you'll need to do this with some other problems as well. So by completing the square, we would do it this way, where we'd say, okay, we need to break off this positive 3. So I'm going to have y equals. Now I want x squared, which means I got to factor out the negative 2. So I'm going to factor out the negative 2. That's going to leave me with x squared. And then negative 4, if I factor out the negative 2, negative 4x divided by negative 2 is a positive 2x. Now I got to leave a space here to complete the square. And then I have my positive 3 broken off here, and I'll have to put the opposite of whatever I end up putting in the parentheses there. So to figure out, to complete the square here, I'm going to take half of my b value, which is the 2 here. So I'm going to take half of that. Half of 2 is 1, okay, and 1 squared is 1. So that is going to be plus 1. And then I have my piece that's broken off here, my plus 3. Now, I really didn't add 1 in the parentheses. I really added negative 2 times 1, okay? So I really added negative 2, because negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. So what I really need to add here is positive 2. Again, it has to be the opposite of what you added in the parentheses. Okay? So now I'm going to go ahead, I've got the negative 2, and I'm going to write this stuff in parentheses. I'm going to write that as a square binomial. Okay? Because I've completed the perfect square up there. So that's going to be x. And it's going to be plus, and again, it's going to be half of my b, so it's going to be plus 1 squared. So if I took x plus 1 and squared it, I would get the x squared plus 2x plus 1. And then I will include what I've broken off over here now. So 3 plus 2 here, I'm going to bring that over, that would be plus 5. Okay, and then I would get my vertex. Remember, your vertex is always the opposite of what's happening to the x. So the opposite of positive 1 is negative 1. And then it's whatever is out here is your y value, which is 5. So there's my vertex at negative 1, 5. And then again, my axis of symmetry is just the x value of the vertex. So it would be x equals negative 1. And then to finish your graph, you could just go ahead and do the same thing we did before. You have your vertex, and you know the y-intercept is 3, so you can make those on there and go ahead and make your parabola opening down. So there's number 2.